Think $100,000 in annual income puts you in a great position to buy a home? Not so fast, my friend. Depending on the loan you choose, depending on your down payment, depending on your particular circumstances, this $100,000 could put you in a spot to buy $200,000 home up to a whopping $600,000. I'm gonna break it all down in this video and give you some pointers not to overextend yourself and make sure you understand your options. All right, let's jump into it. So at a super high level, I need to caution you, these are ballpark, cocktail napkin numbers to give you a rough idea. Let's start with the basics and let's start with a $100,000 annual income gross before taxes. Now, we can call this annual income if it's you as an individual. We can call it annual income if it's you and your significant other buying a house together, but $100,000 coming in. Mortgage math looks like this because it's gross. We do not take in taxes that come out of it. We do not take your 401k participate. We do not talk about medical insurance or spousal support or friend of the court or anything else, just high level right there off the top. $100,000 per month works out to about $8,333 per month. We start with a monthly number. So we're gonna start with $8,333. That's your top line number per month of revenue coming in, again, before taxes. So we're gonna go into some strategies around what that $100,000 equates to for mortgage pre-approval and some different strategies from some different people, some guidelines, some opinions, and I'll probably share some of my opinions as well. So the first strategy we're gonna talk about, Dave Ramsey uses a different number. So we talked about $8,333, which was before taxes. And Dave Ramsey talks about, doesn't matter what you make before taxes, and he is right about that because how much are you actually taking home? Dave Ramsey believes that you should only use 25% of your take-home money for a home purchase. Now, to give you some ideas on what that math looks like, that $8,333 will vary by state, by city, by 100 different things than what your actual take home is, but let's say it works out to $6,666. If you're using Dave Ramsey's method, he says your payment should not be more than 25% of that $6,666, which works out to about $1,666. He also says you should have a 20% down payment to buy a house. Now, again, Dave Ramsey is selling for the masses and selling for everyone, and I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all. I think there's a lot of really good, sound advice in what he brings, but I will tell you, I don't believe in all that. I think it's okay to put less than 20% down, because if you're gonna sit back and wait and save and wait and save, and that house you're trying to buy is appreciating by 5%, 7%, 10% every year, it's like chasing a ball down a hill. You just don't catch up with it. But that's his philosophy. Those are his numbers. So what does that $1,666 look like? That's purchasing about a $250,000 home with a 20% down payment. The assumptions of this are that's $50,000 you have to put down. So you're only financing $200,000. That payment works out to roughly $1,300, property taxes about $260, homeowners insurance in that $50 a month range. That brings us to our $1,666. The biggest thing is how many people have $50,000 set aside to buy a house. Let's look at some of the more standard guidelines for buying a house, and honestly, the guidelines that I follow. Now, I'm not a published author and I haven't written countless books and I'm not a finance guru like Dave Ramsey, but this has helped a lot of people get wealthy. And what these numbers are is 2836. At a high level, your housing expense should not be more than 28% of your gross income. So go back to the $8,333 multiplied by 28%, you're going to come up with that number. And your total debt, your other debt. When I say other debt, I'm talking about things that appear on your credit report, like your car loan, your student loan debts, the minimum for your credit card. Those are the high level. There's some other things that need to be calculated in there, but those are those general numbers. So 28% of that total comes out to $2,333 for a housing payment. And that total debt we talked about at 36 being your total debt of $3,000. So that leaves about $667 for car loans, school loans, minimum credit cards, that sort of thing. So high level numbers. What does that mean for a home purchase? So in this example, let's stick with this 20% down. So it's $350,000. Again, let's say we've accumulated 20% to put down. So putting 20% down. This same scenario, we're able to afford a $350,000 house versus that ultra-conservative Dave Ramsey model, which was only a $250,000 house. So a $350,000 house, putting 20% down. Principal and interest payment would be about $1,816, taxes around $364, homeowners insurance about $100, bringing that total payment $2,283, and that fits into that 28% number we talked about, 28% of $8,333. So that standard rule with conventional was that 28-36. That's like with good credit, even decent credit, even a little lower credit with a 20% down payment, you can get approved for that. Let's stick with conventional loans. Conventional loans, we have had clients approved all the way up to 49.9999. So in that example of 8,333, their total payments could be like $4,160 for their house, their car, their student loans, their everything else bundled up. If you get up to that 49.999%, you have to have good credit. So that's something to take into consideration, and it's based on individuals. In addition, if that's your only household income, you have to ask yourself a question. Again, that $8,333, and we're going to get up to $4,200, that's only leaving about $4,000 some odd dollars in between. Remember that $8,300 is before taxes. How much are taxes coming out? And remember, groceries aren't included in this. Childcare isn't included in this. Other debt that's not disclosed, things that are out there to live, your 401k, your retirement. Maybe you want to go on vacation. So if you're looking at this household income at 49.99, you really got to ask yourself a question. Where I feel comfortable with clients that are getting up to that is when they have additional income coming in that we can't count. An example of that would be, let's say there's a spouse that just started a new job and for some reason they couldn't be included in the mortgage qualification. Maybe it's a commission income job that has some great upside and the income is going to be coming in, but it doesn't count towards our calculations. But we know it's going to come in and you feel good about it. Just because someone says they can approve you for it, do you really want to go that high? Big question to ask yourself. Let's say you did want to do this and you felt comfortable. Here's what it looked like. It could be a purchase as high as $600,000 with a 20% down payment would give you a principal and interest payment of about $3,113. Again, cocktail napkin math, rough numbers, assuming somewhere in that 6.7% interest rate. Let's add in $625 for property taxes. Let's add in $175 for insurance. So that total payment works out to right around $3,913. Now that 49% comes out to that $4,165. So that house is all the way up at 39. That means you can't have more than a couple $100 of minimum credit card debts or anything else on your credit report, anything else that you have a monthly obligation. So extreme example, but giving you an idea to help you understand better. So now we talked about putting 20% down with the conventional loan, being very conservative, looking at someone like Dave Ramsey, who I respect and has a lot of really strong things that he preaches and talks about. We talk about the general mortgage guidelines for a conventional loan. Again, I said it a few times already, we talked about 20% down options. There are conventional loan options with as little as 3% down. So we can't cover the entire mortgage industry in one video. So moving on from that, we're going to move to an FHA loan. It's a loan that I used when I bought my first home a short 31 or 32 years ago. So if you're making $300,000, FHA loan only requires a 3.5% down payment. And again, with all these loans, there's closing costs, there's other fees, so just high level. But the down payment portion is just 3.5%. So on $300,000, that 3.5% works out to $10,500. Now, FHA has monthly mortgage insurance, and they also have an upfront mortgage insurance. Doesn't come out of pocket, but it's tacked on top of that loan. But high level math, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, using a moderate interest rate, you could easily afford a $300,000 house on a $100,000 income. In that $2,348 would be your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance number. A lot of that depends on what your other debt is, so keep that in mind. So interesting thing with an FHA is FHA focuses on what have you done lately. And what I talk about lately is maybe you had some credit issues in the past, but you've been on the straight and narrow for the last 12 months. Maybe you don't have a lot of credit established. Maybe your score's a little bit lower. With conventional loans, as your score comes down lower, your mortgage insurance gets more expensive and your interest rate gets more expensive. With FHA, if you qualify for the program, you're going to pay the same mortgage insurance, and there's not as big of fluctuations to interest rates based on credit scores. FHA also allows for lower credit scores. And here's the crazy thing. Not only does it allow for lower credit scores, it actually allows your total debt to income to go even higher than that 49.99% for conventional loans. I have seen FHA loans get approved for a scary 56%. Now again, 56% of your total income before taxes. If Uncle Sam's taking out 40% of your income, let's just say 40, let's say your taxes are crazy. Uncle Sam's taking out 40% of your income. Your house payment and your minimum obligations on your credit card, your car, your school loan, everything else is up at 57%. You might as well call that 60. That's 3 percentage points in between. That math doesn't work. So just because somebody said you can do it, it doesn't mean you should do it. So I ran you through super high level, just some meat and potatoes on some odds and ends and a couple different mortgage ideas and concepts. Your situation is different, and talk to a mortgage professional. If you want to talk to a professional, talk to me specifically. I would love to guide you down a path to build something that's right for you. If there was ever anything to stretch on, in my professional opinion, it is a hard appreciating asset. Are you going to stretch on a car that as soon as you drive out of the driveway, it depreciates, or get in a car accident or something else happens, compared to a house which should appreciate in value? And if you look over time, homes have, and they've been a great investment. If you found this helpful and you want to watch another video, do a deep dive on how you can become a homeowner in as little as 3 months, follow this video.